All right, looks like we got a good bit of our audience has gone ahead and trickled in. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started for today. Welcome everyone. We're excited to be here with you today for a thoughtful conversation on scaling manufacturing finance and operations with intelligent automation. Just a few friendly reminders before we get started on today's session. One, of course, please turn on your speakers. We do want you to hear all the exciting conversations we'll be having today. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to type them into the chat box. We will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of today's call to address any questions. Additionally, the session will be recorded. So if there's anything that you missed, or maybe a team member or colleague, maybe even a friend that missed out on today's session, we will have it recorded and that can be sent to them. Awesome. So, hey everyone, again, my name is Tanner Nyers. I'm a pre-sales engineer here at Canvas. I spent the last 6 years working across both manual manufacturing finance operations and automation solutions for finance teams. This webinar really hits home for me. Starting off my professional career accounting at Cummins Engines, I experienced firsthand the manual back office complexities manufacturers face every day. And on the automation side, working on strategic solutions to move away from those manual archaic processes. I'm happy to be joined alongside Jeff from our DelmiaWorks ERP and Brady from Sisler Manufacturing. Jeff, I'll go ahead and pass it over to you for a little introduction.
Great. Thanks, Tanner. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Guthrie. I'm a data solution architect here at DelmiaWorks, which is a manufacturing ERP software. I've been with the company for about 5 years, leading integration initiatives. Prior, I was at a blow molding manufacturer, so I've been in the manufacturing space well over a decade now.
Brady, off to you.
Thanks, Tanner. Hey, everyone. My name is Brady Nomofsky. It's great to be here. I'm the controller for a manufacturing company, automotive industry, appliance industry. Been in my position for about 5 years also. Pretty broad industry exposure, but really kind of found a home in the manufacturing space, manufacturing industry, and I've also been a DelmiaWorks user for about 5 years.
Awesome. Awesome. Brady and Jeff, thanks guys for tagging along with me today. I'm really excited to be here with you both for the technical and the functional experts with this hands-on experience and these real life issues that our finance teams are facing when trying to scale manufacturing. And for our agenda today, we have a lot of exciting topics to discuss. We'll start by setting some context and laying the ground for why we're all here. Then we'll dive into our range of topics, having thoughtful conversations around scaling finance without adding headcount, ERP optimization, common document complexity that our manufacturing teams are facing, as well as exception handling, visibility, audit, multi-plant growth, implementation, and we'll ultimately round off with a Q&A session for any questions that come up in our chat today. But let's go ahead and set the tone for today's section. Manufacturers today are scaling faster than many finance operations can keep up with. The challenge isn't ERP capability. Systems like DelmiaWorks manage structured operational data extremely well. The friction really typically occurs more upstream in bringing structured to unstructured fragmented data to be inputted into ERPs like DelmiaWorks. Today's session, we're going to explore all about how modern manufacturers are addressing document complexity, finance scalability, and operational growth through intelligent automation. We'll discuss those real-world challenges that our manufacturers of all shapes and sizes are facing. And we'll talk about why companies are relying more on a platform approach with extended AI capabilities versus traditional point solutions using outdated extraction tools like OCR. We'll be reinforcing ERPs like our friends at DelmiaWorks remain the backbone for finance operations, and how intelligent automation only enhances rather than disrupts these ERP functions. Leave it to myself, Brady, and Jeff today to combine industry insights, customer experience, and technology throughout today's session. And of course, first, let's talk about, for those of you who don't know who Canvas is, we're not just another point solution for automating invoice processing. We're an agentic platform bringing organizations purpose-built intelligent AI agents to automate end-to-end touchless processes, no matter the use case or complexity. A common journey for many of our clients is to start off with a quick wins like AP automation or sales order automation, and they really don't stop there. Canvas, we deploy agents across the full source to pay process for vendor onboarding, PO requisitions, vendor inquiries, and much more. And on the flip side, Canvas encapsulates the full quote to cash process with agents for customer onboarding, quote generation, sales order processing, and of course, cash application too. These agents aren't just limited to those finance functions. For our manufacturers specifically today, we've designed quality assurance agents for review and inspect of those quality reports, agents responsible for ingesting equipment and maintenance logs, plus service reports too. And even outside of finance and manufacturing, we deploy and internally use agents here at Canvas for IT and HR. These agents can be embedded directly within your internal collaboration tools like Teams, GChat, or Slack. And our Canvas agents, they're more than just query chatbots. They're completing end-to-end workflows that were once manual, connected to a variety of systems, not just limited to the ERP or CRM. I'm really excited to be here and talk about how we're transforming finance operations surrounding use cases today with our panelists. But of course, before we get started, let's get a sense from our audience on where do you see the biggest opportunity for automation in your current manufacturing ERP-driven process? You guys should see a poll coming up. Please go ahead and offer your responses. We do want to hear what you have to say. And I'm just curious to know from our audience, right? Where some you do see automation fitting in some of these categories? Is it in the invoice data and capture and extraction? Or even how about sales order automation, capturing those new customer POs that are coming in through various channels, right? We can even talk about the quality assurance reports, maintenance logs, or service reports. We know this is very common in the manufacturing space. Or maybe even that vendor onboarding and ongoing management, dealing with a lot of mom and pops, your higher suppliers. All of this is a big load management on the team, or maybe even all of the above, right? Let's get AI across all these areas. So I'm very excited to hear what you guys have to say. All right, Himanshu, very good. So we can see some trickling in here. Awesome, a lot of invoice capture and data extraction. We know it's those upstream kind of processes that are really making it tough for us. And a lot of all the above too. So I'm glad to hear. I know it's a big push. We're hearing it from a lot of prospects and ongoing customers of really trying to push automation throughout every process in their organization. So I'm excited that you guys can be here for today's topic. And let's get started exactly where we need to with scaling finance without adding headcount. So we know as these transaction volumes rise, organizations are traditionally scaled by adding staff. It's a pretty simple solution, right? But that's a legacy model in today's ever-changing technology world. It's really not a scalable approach. I saw this firsthand at Cummins Engines, where we outsource back office duties and continue using that same outdated technology stack we had for the past 20 years. But our finance teams are really asking a different question now. How do I 3x my business with the same team? So Jeff, I'll point to you for this one. You know, we know you work closely with a lot of these manufacturers who are asking themselves the same question and really turning to you for what solutions other DelmiaWorks customers have come up with. From your perspective and working with these manufacturers, what type of pressures are you seeing these finance teams are facing today?
Yeah, really great question. It's something that we come across all the time here in our channel. You know, really one of the big pieces is headcount, right? You kind of touched on that. Companies are, in our experience, are finding it harder and harder to acquire headcount, especially in some of the areas like AP and accounting related portions, maintaining headcount, right? Some of the other complexity that we see is you know, the recent years with all of the supply chain kind of disruptions and challenges that have come across for many of our customers and their suppliers. That's been a huge piece. Vendor variability, right? Tariffs, you know, all these different charges. Just the variability there has been really hard for a lot of our users. Mm-hmm. And lastly, I think the you know, trying to grow and keep up with that growth, right? We've seen a lot of our customers grow even through some of these challenging times, and It's been great to see, but them trying to keep up is always a challenge.
Yep. And of course, it's really tough today with a lot of options and trying to automate these workflows, or what other solutions can we do by adding another headcount, not knowing if we're going to lose this person tomorrow due to some, outside issue. So Brady, I want to turn to you now from, the actual customer's perspective, and how do these challenges resonate with your experience at Sysler? And really, what was that realization, rather than hiring a new person for $50,000 a year, not even talking about the burden costs? Maybe should we take a different approach?
Yeah, I think you guys hit the nail on the head. Everything is becoming more global and scaling. Requirements are increasing. Tariffs are constantly changing. Increased legal burden, compliance burden on accounting departments, and you're really and decide where you want to go. Do you want to take a risk, increase headcount, increase costs, or find an alternative solution in a way that you can scale consistently?
Right. Yeah. And it's not only looking to finding that right person to complete the process too, right? It's also the technology approach. And there's, billions of people out there. There's hundreds of different technologies, but how do we choose the right one that's a scalable solution? And again, coming back to our question of how do I 3X my business with the same team, right? It's enabling people with technology. Awesome. Really, really great, guys. Let's keep it rolling here. I love this section, ERP optimization versus ERP extension. We know the ERP has been and always will be the source of truth, right? It's the backbone of the organization. There's no denying or replacing that. Our modern enterprises, they're not failing within their ERP. Their challenges lie a little bit more upstream in managing these multiple channels with fragmented data that need to make its way cleanly into our ERP in order to make those better real-time strategic decisions. And Jeff, I'm curious, from a DelmiaWorks perspective, we know clean data, it can easily be inputted into DelmiaWorks through channels like EDI. Heck, you're the expert on this, right? But not all of that incoming data can really be captured through EDI. Organizations, they're taking a different approach now and trying to introduce automation to capture data from these various channels, but worried that introducing an automation tool or a third-party vendor might disrupt some of these ERP workflows. How do you see the balance, Jeff, between optimizing the ERP versus extending the ERP's capabilities?
Yeah, that's also a really great question, and I believe we're in a really different day and age in terms of ERP, right? Many ERPs used to kind of try to be a one-stop shop, account for everything, be the sole solution for all facets of the business. And I think we're breaking out of that age and that concept. I think the extension layer now is pretty much necessary and almost in my eyes pretty acceptable and accepted by many companies these days. There's lots of softwares out there that are really good and have a niche in areas that maybe some systems might be lacking. They may have something that's a tool that can be used, but maybe there's a better tool out there, right? So allowing these tools to be connected to systems is critical and key in my part. There's tools that maybe aren't in the system, and for example, perfect scenario, the AP side, right? Many of that data is unstructured. ERPs are typically really good with structured data, and trying to take that unstructured data and force it in there isn't very feasible until we have a tool such as Canvas, right? That takes unstructured and feeds it to the ERP in a structured way. So allowing tools do what they do best, right? The ERP can be a source of truth. It can handle the structured processes, whether that's in the manufacturing line, the accounting, processes, but taking the tools that we have like Canvas and allowing them to run their course with the unstructured side, I think is really great.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Jeff, where, the ERPs, they're not only housing AP data. We have our order information, we have our quotes, we have our inventory. There's numerous things that exist within the ERP, and customers likely are going to point at solutions, one that only handles AP automation or one that only handles sales automation. And they're, not trying to add to their technology stack. They're really looking to optimize their spend, their budgets. So they're going for a more platform approach into, okay, we have all these different facets within our ERP and we need to get our data readily available in there. So how can we take an approach and not extending out these, 10 different technologies to get information all into one place, but a single source of truth that sits more upstream to get us that structured data in. So I think you hit it right on the head there, Jeff. And Brady, I want to come to you here too. Mind you, in this next section, we'll be talking about document complexity challenges, but I know you guys were using, prior to Canvas, EDI to capture some vendor invoice data. But of course, not all those vendors use EDI. Can you talk to me about some of those various other sources like email, snail mail, and some of the manual work that was done to get some of this fragmented data into the ERP?
Yeah, I think in the manufacturing industry specifically, there's quite a variety of where vendors are at. Some vendors are advanced enough to EDI files. Vendors are still sending paper copies of invoices and expecting you to write them a check and send the check back in the mail. And so you're dealing with, a huge spectrum of data, unstructured data, as you guys were talking about, and different sources, different channels that it's all coming in at, and you're just funneling it in to your ERP system. And when you don't have a way to, you don't have a good tool or a process that's able to convert that data into a clean, structured format, it can become a huge nightmare. And so just dealing with the wide varieties, we got Excel invoices, written invoices, PDF formatted invoices, all different kinds of stuff. And there's even other that we'll talk about later, expense reports, things like that, there's no telling what kind of format you're going to receive something in.
Yep. And
traditional way is a challenge.
Yeah, Brady, and it's the tools and the processes, right? Many companies have a centralized AP email, but other times they don't, right? There's really just that go-to stop shop for sending invoices in to a particular user at an organization, or even orders to a specific, salesperson. And all of these are scattered. They're not coming through a centralized channel to be fed directly into a system, right? They're scattered throughout everywhere. It's, of course, capturing that. Some were getting POs through PDFs. Others were getting POs just simply written directly within the email body, right? And turning it into structured data in our ERP. So it's really combining all those various channels to grab and capture that data in real time. Of course, classifying it up front, is this an inquiry? Is this a PO? Is this an invoice? Continuing out those workflows. So I think you guys both hit it on the head there as far as the tools and the processes. We don't even talk about the processes enough in the workflows, right? And we'll be talking about audit and compliance in a later section, and how important it really is, especially from your point of view, Brady, as a controller, of ensuring that we're meeting all this audit and compliance across all these various channels and all these different technologies that we have within our organization. So really, really great, guys. Awesome. Let's keep it moving. Let's talk about document complexity in the manufacturing space. I mean, this topic, it really hits home for me. From processing over 200 manual invoices a day during my time at Cummins, I knew just how complex vendor documents could be. From the largest suppliers, even to the littlest mom and pops, there was really a multitude of complexities to their documents. Of course, you have vendors, they're getting acquired, they have new invoice layouts, new formats, a lot of companies like OCR automation solutions, they're forcing those vendors to send their invoices in PDF. However, their vendors have been sending invoices in, Excel, like you mentioned, Brady, for the past 10 years. Why do we need to change it to a PDF format, right? So, you know, in a previous role, I implemented these OCR automation solutions for various manufacturing organizations, and the impact was small. OCR wasn't the solution for their complex invoices. They needed more. And Brady, you know, I'm really curious about some of the manual challenges that your team faced with vendor invoices from these complex vendor formats, handwritten notes, matching my invoice lines to the PO lines. You know, how much of your team's time was really spent processing documents versus meaningful work like servicing our vendors?
Quite a bit of time. One found that out was the number of keystrokes being spent in the accounts payable area. You know, description, comment type fields being filled in manually from, you know, miscellaneous purchases from our engineers or other departments outside of, you know, regular inventory orders. But even on the inventory side, you know, we're primarily a steel manufacturer. We're changing steel in different ways to create parts, and steel mills invoices can be quite complex. Unstructured data is a layered column, so you'll have a part number and a description immediately underneath it. I have two different quantities related to different units of measure stacked on top of each other, and teaching a human how to read those invoices and enter those invoices into an ERP can take quite a bit of time. Other products or, you know, solutions like Canvas, there was a much more dynamic way to do it, and all of that logic in. So we've seen a significant impact on that front.
Yeah, and I'm glad you talked about that, Brady. And just to follow up, you know, can you speak to a little bit on how Canvas has solved these challenges for you guys and classifying invoices and their relevant packing slips, extracting those data, matching that packing slip to the invoice? Just really talk about how Canvas's multi-stage patented AI engine, and as well as that business rule framework, has helped you guys in extracting these invoices, so you guys are clearly able to have, again, these strategic real-time decisions and taking away from that manual work, and then again, that more and more meaningful work to really service your vendors.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the aspects I didn't touch on yet was the document matching process that our accounting department goes through. So not just entering in invoice data, but also taking supporting documents that support and validate the purchase was approved through our ERP. It's related to a purchase order. We had a matching receipt for the proper quantity that was signed off on by somebody in the receiving department. And all the documents, essentially from the shipment to the vendor invoice, everything aligns and is able to be entered into our ERP. And all of that all those document requirements are basically just to be in compliance with all kinds of different standards and just general business best practices. And so a significant amount of our AP clerk's time was not just spent entering the invoice, but also compiling the documents and matching them to the invoices to, you know, use some solid business logic, business rules that are really reference numbers on documents, using basically extracts all that relevant information, which is the supporting document.
Yep. Hey, Brady, really quick, let me stop you really quick. I think we're getting some lag on our end from you. Is there any way we could have you maybe mute your mic, turn it back on, maybe try some solution in here? I'm just getting a little bit of lag on my end.
All right.
Sorry to our audience here. Brady, let's see. We're the tech experts here.
Can you hear me all right?
We got you now, man.
Okay. I'll just disconnect that headset. Hopefully that helps out. Where did I cut off?
Well, let me bring up a point here, Brady, because you had a lot of great things to mention. And I think, you know, for some of these things, people think that automation for invoice is strictly just capturing the data on those invoices, extracting it. They don't, you know, at a high level, they're not thinking about what those everyday business users are doing and matching the invoice to the relevant packing slip, right? I have to validate the invoice number, the PO number, the BOL, make sure it lines up with the packing slip. So it's a lot of these little small steps in the process that gets you that validated, clean information within your ERP. I think that a lot of our high level people kind of get lost with, right? They think that AP is a lot simpler task, or even sales order automation is a lot simpler than it really is. And I think you stuck to some of the great points there, where it's not just as simple as getting an invoice in a PDF format, taking the data on there and pin punching into Delmia Works, right? There's more to it. It's, I need to understand which invoice line is being matched to which PO line, whether my vendor, uses item code ABC, but we use 1, 2, 3, right? Or maybe they bill us for writing utensils, we call it pencils, right? All of these things take a little bit of an extra second to process in your brain. More or less, it's taking more of that manual time to actually process. So I think you touched on some really good topics there of just really the day in the life of the AP team and getting that structured data into an ERP like Delmia Works. Yeah,
as we referred to earlier, the requirements keep compounding. As you get new legislation passed, maybe you have different international vendors or suppliers, tariff laws keep changing, all of that keeps snowballing, and if you don't have a way to keep up with it, it can become quite the nightmare. So
Yep. And I know, Jeff, you guys at Delmia Works, you guys have almost figured, you have figured out, I should say, those unique items codes and descriptions through the AKA, keeping track of those your vendor item codes and those various descriptions that they have that differ from our invoices, so you can easily process. Of course, you guys have done a great job of being able to maintain that data in the ERP, right? And then, of course, on the Canvas side, we're making it very easy to validate against that list of AKA. So we know that 1, 2, 3 equals ABC for our vendor Freightliner and whatnot. So, it's kudos to the ERP too, and what Delmia Works functionality has, and making that information ready and available. So a vendor like ourselves at Canvas can easily validate that information within the ERP and quickly maintain that time that AP is spending in case to process an invoice. Awesome. In our next section, I know this one, Brady, Jeff, you guys are really the technical functional experts. So I know this one is going to really bring home to you guys for exception handling, visibility, audit, and compliance, right? We know document complexity and manually pulling the data from the documents. It's really just the start of this process, managing all those different channels that we've talked about earlier and bringing this data in, right? Some come to my centralized AP email, some are coming through physical mail, some go to AP Clerk 123, right? And we know as these transaction volumes grow, so do managing those exceptions, maintaining visibility across these fragmented workflows, and ensuring continuous audit readiness, right? Brady, as a controller, this is big. And Jeff, from the ERP side, that getting at that real-time data in the ERP and a great table is really resourceful. So, the value isn't just being able to extract the data from these incoming sources quickly, it's really managing those workflows when discrepancies like missing receipts or pricing mismatch arise, plus really ensuring that the proper supporting evidence is documented for audit and compliance too, right? So Brady, I'll come back to you on this one. Being the controller, firsthand how important it is to surface these exceptions and these discrepancies in real time and really ensure the proper workflows are being followed. Can you talk a little bit about how Canvas has really changed this for you guys through, of course, extracting that data with our multi-stage AI engine, and then, of course, the flexible business rule framework, right? And surfacing these discrepancies, routing them, letting you know of any of these discrepancy scenarios like missing receipts or differences in metric units even specific to you guys.
Yeah, so there's a lot of layers to this. I think the obvious thing that everybody's going to look at and address is things like making sure the invoice detail line items reconcile to the invoice total, matching to the PO and the receipts and things of that nature. We got a little more in depth and a little bit more creative with some things. For invoices that should be matched to a PO but weren't, we have notifications being kicked out to the buyers for each of those POs to let them know, hey, we've got an invoice from the vendor or the supplier. We don't have a matching receipt. you know, did we receive the inventory? And if so, it needs to be received, or if not, then accounts payable needs to be notified so we can reject the invoice. We've got some other logic built into, for example, for our steel suppliers. When we get steel coils, the supplier weighs them at the steel mill, and then that weight is put on the documentation, and that's what's shipped to us. And we have different scales, and inevitably, you know, most scales aren't perfect. They can be calibrated differently. There can be small variations. And so one of the things that we always struggled with was aligning weights on the information from the steel supplier to the invoice. And with Canvas, we were able to build in some logic and acceptable thresholds to be able to match the appropriate receipts to the invoice detail lines. And I'm oversimplifying that. That was a beast of a process, but it turned out really great. And then, you know, on another front, we talked about some of the supporting documents and document matching. We were able to build in some rules and logic surrounding that so that invoices aren't inadvertently posted or published without the supporting documents that we require. So we have Canvas notifying us that, you know, hey, this invoice is ready to post, everything looks good, but you're missing your supporting documentation. And so we're gonna, you know, put that on hold until that gets attached. So lots of different logic that we put in place that's made our processes really robust.
Yeah, Brady, and I just want to touch on that really quick, right? We've talked, you know, about the automation that Canvas is bringing through these business rules, but even take a step back where these manual workflows once for discrepancies and exceptions. When that missing receipt happened, right, AP was probably going down to receiving or sending out an email that may have gone, you know, unresponded to, right? More or less all of this kind of, when this discrepancy arises, we know we need to go to receiving, right? And that was just a manual process, or even exception handling for pricing variance, right? We would have to go, you know, AP's processing, they see a unit price difference between their invoice, between their PO, they go to the PO buyer to ensure it's correct, the PO buyer confirms, maybe has to update the PO right, and then those weight conversions too, and having to manually calculate you know, what is it, kgs to pounds, right? So having a unique business workflow, you know, rule framework where we can automate, you know, if a missing receipt for this item, it needs to go to Chris over in receiving, right? Or if we have an exception for pricing variance on this PO, we already know who the PO buyer is. Let's automate an email out to them to let them know, or you maybe even assign them the invoice if that's their responsibility. And of course, with the weight conversions too, right? Where those were once manually calculated, now through our business rule framework, we can actually automate what kg, the conversion from kg to pounds is. And we're all throughout, of course, this automating all these processes while also maintaining that audit and compliance. So we're sticking to these workflows. We're not able to process an invoice, like you said, unless it has that supporting attachment, if it's a PO related document. So I think that's really, really great. And we got a lot to cover on this slide. And really quick, I'll come to you, Jeff, because we had a really great conversation, you and I did on this, about really the way that Canvas is transforming this data. Of course, quickly getting it into WWorks for these strategic decisions to be made. But can you speak a little bit more to how Canvas has transformed the way WWorks customers can really now easily access and store data by passing of these SharePoint links versus documents?
Yeah, it's honestly one of my, it's so minute, but it's such a big piece. Well, honestly, one of my favorite pieces to this integration. And in current state, what we see a lot of our customers doing is taking the supporting documents or the invoice itself, right? And they're attaching it to the AP voucher in the database. Sometimes they're attaching the email thread. Sometimes they're attaching just the physical PDF copy or the Excel document. But that gets stored in the database. And, you know, as you compile these and, you know, years of operating that way and storing that way, it increases your database size, right? Because now it's, you know, piling up in there, which can lead to, you know, turnaround time when it comes to upgrade, The larger database is going to take longer to upgrade. It's got to go through more lines of code, evaluate more data. And so the way that Canvas has solutionized this is passing a link, a SharePoint link to that supporting documentation or that invoice itself. That gets stored in the database and it's a hyperlink. So now somebody just goes to that AP record, clicks the hyperlink, takes them out to where it's stored. They can see all the supporting documentation in one area. It's cloud-based, which is great. So you're not storing that data on on-prem. I mean, there's so many benefits to it. And again, it's very small to some, but to me, living the IT life and the database admin life, it takes its toll trying to keep up storing that old way. So very creative and very awesome process that I'm fond of.
Yeah. And Jeff, I even think we got ahead of ourselves. We're talking about the database, but we haven't even, I haven't even mentioned really the challenge of some of these customers or manufacturing teams that are still relying on manual processes. They're manually filing this information, printing off every invoice, stapling it to its relevant packing slip. So we talk about, getting those databases full, but even those filing cabinets too, and all of which makes it very tough from an audit and compliance SharePoint of, hey, go look in this filing cabinet and somewhere in this SharePoint site where, Brady, I'm going to come back to you here shortly on this, where we're making it easy for that when that audit comes through of giving them access to a SharePoint where all of that invoice information, all the relevant packing slips can be found. So I think that's extremely important, Jeff. And you're right. Some people may look at it as a minute thing, but being a part of the ERP and the technology landscape, we know just how important those databases are, maintaining those documents within them, ensuring that we're not going over our file storage. So very, very good points. And Brady, I wanted to come back to you here because you and I had also had a separate discussion on this about how Canvas has really added visibility and less requirements on your end when it comes to that audit and compliance through passing the SharePoint link and some of the creative things that you've actually done within Delmia Works to get you more real-time information.
Yeah, so it's been a game changer for us on the audit front. Where we were at, we did start with filing cabinets and paper, and that was one of the first things I tried to get rid of when I was hired. I walked into that and I said, no more, we're not going to pay for a storage unit. We're done with that. And so we started putting documents within the database, and as Jeff was alluding to, there's a lot of great benefits to doing that, and there's also some disadvantages. You got database size kind of working against you as you put more documents in there. One of the other things is, Delmia Works has a great document control module, but it is exactly that, it's document control. And so being able to just dump your documents out and, for purposes of an audit or something like that, it's not exactly easy to do. You've got to go through and pull each one of those documents manually. And that was kind of a hurdle for us. It was a challenge. And so, upon implementing Canvas, one of the benefits that we immediately saw was, hey, these documents, they're no longer in document control, although SharePoint does have some document control in it that you can utilize. They're accessible through links, and that link is a field in our database. And so what we were able to do is basically create a query tool. It's a dashboard, has a bunch of filterable fields. You can filter for vendor, date range, invoice amount, particular inventory items, comment fields, you name it. Basically any field that you want to, you can filter on. And you can get the criteria from your auditor, say, hey, I want to see maybe all invoices from your supplier ABC for the past 3 months, but only the ones that are over $500. Sometimes auditors ask ridiculous questions. And so we built something that can basically handle that filtering criteria, and it pulls up all those links that are connected to those invoices, with the invoice information, of course. And we're able to send that URL link of that dashboard to the auditor and say, here you go. Click on whatever link you want, all the documents are there. and they're really able to answer their own questions, and it takes the burden off of us of pulling all those invoices, organizing them, you know, by date or by amount or what have you, and puts the ball in the auditor's court, which we like a lot.
Yeah, Brady, and I just find that so unique, you know. So it's between the manually filing and really how we're transforming this data and what you're able to now do, and having these dashboards ever present to make these audit and compliance is so much easier than what they used to be. It chimes home for me. It's a process I'm glad I don't have to deal much with anymore, being here at Canvas on the automation side, right? But I hear it from our customers all the time. And of course, they're at the forefront of my head at all times, and hearing these and how can we make their situation a little bit better, right? So we make it sound easy, right? Passing a SharePoint link through. I think that just goes to show how, you know, how capable our guys are behind the scenes of making this all possible, and really why we do it for our customers. So when these audit and compliances come through, it's a lot easier than what it ever used to be. So really happy for you guys, from your guys' perspectives, hearing that. I think that's truly amazing. Let's go ahead and move on about managing this multi-plant growth, right? We know for a lot of our manufacturers, they're growing every single day, every year, they're adding more e-plants, right? And they're not struggling to grow these multi-plant operations because demand is lacking, right? They struggle because the operational complexity scales faster than the control really does. That multi-plant growth, it doesn't break manufacturing by any means. It just exposes the limits of our disconnected systems, or various channels, inconsistent processes, and this fragmented visibility across sites. So the growth, it often amplifies these blind spots that we don't really think about, right? What was once a local exception, going down to, you know, Bob and receiving, or, you know, going to my PO buyer just directly in the shop, right? It really becomes, you know, it came from a local exception. It's now becoming a systemic visibility gap across the enterprise. So, Jeff, I want to go to you here. You know, we talk to DelmiaWorks customers all the time who manage multiple e-plants, whether that be by a centralized team or various teams across various e-plants, right? So, you know, I'm just curious, how do growing manufacturers really maintain consistency across these multiple facilities?
Yeah, that's another great question, full of great questions today, Tanner. You know, this is one that I'll come to from a few different vantage points. One of them in particular is in relation to what we've seen as our customers integrate with Canvas, right? That do have multiple facilities and what we refer to as e-plants. Number one, it's a great time to go through and really audit what the process is, right? You actually get to see what users are doing, not just trust what they're doing or, you know, honor what they say they're doing. So what we've seen is customers go through that period of evaluation and functional design, and they've realized that, oh, this plant is not processing the same as this plant, right? So it turns about all those inconsistencies, and it leads them to what another vantage point of mine, which is you really do have to kind of, you know, follow some standardization, right? And that's where the documents that Canvas passes over to the ERP or the data structure, right, that's the standardization that we talk about. The data files or the data strings are standardized. They're not going to fluctuate. They contain all the relevant pieces needed to create a AP voucher within the ERP system, or other areas, sales order, right? So standardization is one. And what I think goes along with that allows for manufacturers to maintain consistency and grow would be some controlled flexibility, right? We understand that plants can be different in some aspects, and they should be, right? Maybe they're different manufacturing types, you know, dealing with different vendors. And so I think that's where Canvas really brings about some of that flexibility, more controlled flexibility, right? than what the ERP may offer. So you can spin out custom workflows for maybe that particular entity and site. So I think that helps maintaining consistency, not putting the flexibility in the software, the ERP directly, but another area that's really proficient at handling that. And then the other thing I think that really brings consistency across multiple facilities is the visibility aspect, right? Allowing, you know, real-time visibility across all facilities. Canvas does a great job at that, whether it's orders or, you know, invoices. I know that really helps leadership a ton, right? Those would be the big pieces to maintaining consistency and growth across facilities.
Yeah, great, Jeff. I appreciate that response because, you know, you brought up a really interesting point of the unique workflows per e-plant, right? Not all e-plants are manufacturing the same goods. They may not even have the same, you know, there's not a centralized finance team across e-plants, right? Each e-plant may have their own finance team. So it's, you know, Brady had touched on this a little bit earlier in reference to our business rule framework of ensuring that these workflows are followed, you know, and halting any process in which it's not followed. You know, you use the example of missing receipts and missing supporting attachments. So I think, you know, when people start thinking about automation solutions, they find a good one, but it's not customized for their business, right? It's a pointed solution that says, hey, your invoices follow this strict path. It needs every invoice needs an approval, where we know every invoice doesn't, right? And again, there's unique workflows, even say within a singular e-plant for, you know, PO processing versus non-PO processing. So Jeff, you touched on it, having a unified platform, you know, not only from the ERP sake, but even on the processing side of, hey, where can I get an overall look of everything in process for this e-plant or all my e-plants, right? And Canvas is bringing customers that ability through our dashboards, through our reports. So I think that's really great, Jeff, and I really appreciate the perspective there, because I think a lot of this gets lost in the fold of, you know, how do we emulate our current manual challenges through automation, right? We have all these unique tribal rules, right? Where Debbie, who's been in accounting for 20 years, she knows everything. She's our one-stop shop. But when Debbie leaves, we don't know what we're going to do, right? So when you have these business rules that are implemented, right, you have new people coming on, and they know nothing besides following these rules, because you're getting these real-time discrepancies or workflows initiated directly through Canvas. That allows your team really allows your organization to scale with that same team, no matter if it's new members, old members coming along, maybe finding new pathways, but enforcing all that audit readiness and compliance. So really, really great stuff there. I know we're coming up, we got about 11 minutes left, and that brings us really to our last portion of today's call for the implementation and partnership. I know one of the biggest concerns organizations have when adopting automation is the implementation complexity. They really wonder how much time and effort is needed from their IT team in building out the integration, consulting costs, all of which, right? You know, the implementation is often where the transformation efforts succeed or they quietly stall. And in the case of Canvas and DelmiaWorks, these customers aren't stalling. They're getting onboarded faster and smarter in as little as 4 to 6 weeks. And rarely do you find an automation vendor having such a strong relationship with the ERP, right? The DelmiaWorks teams, and a huge kudos to you, Jeff, and the guys for really laying out some times to work closely with us for really the past 6 months on ensuring that customer experience comes first. Because I think at the end of the day, for all of us, it's true to the heart. For myself, coming from these manual processes to support and automation vendors, and we know just how much customer success really means. So, you know, gathering for those weekly sessions to collaborate on both API and EDI implementation, ensuring there's no hiccups occurring during implementation, and really not stopping from there, right? We're just continuously working together to ensure ongoing success for our joint clients. So, you know, Brady, from the customer side, I'm just curious, you know, what made your guys' Canvas implementation so successful?
So I'll try to paint the picture holistically if I can in a short period of time. We've got an IT manager, and that's our IT department. It's just one person. He's not formally educated in IT, but he kind of picked it up and made a career out of it. And he's good at what he does. But you know, if you ask him how much involvement he had in our implementation, he'd say, yeah, I set up the SharePoint site. I gave them some credentials, and that was about it. I handled the implementation from our company side pretty much by myself. Didn't have much of the accounting department involved because this project was kind of a surprise, if you will, for the accounting department, unlocking that ability to give us more time to handle other things. And so I kind of worked hand in hand with the Canvas team by myself. And even while managing other responsibilities, you know, we were able to get the implementation done in a reasonable amount of time. And that's because Canvas did a lot of the heavy lifting. They say, you know, it's a white glove implementation, and they mean it. I changed some things up on them. I changed logic throughout. You know, you kind of make corrections as you go. And, you know, I think they did a phenomenal job customizing Canvas for us. Getting the workflow in place, and then nitpicking all the different invoices and the high amount of variety that we encounter. And so I give a lot of credit to the Canvas implementation team, and then also leveraging the Delmia Works EDI team. They did a great job in helping us take that data from Canvas and getting it into the ERP system. And so honestly, between Jeff's team and the Canvas team, it made the implementation one of the smoothest I've ever had.
Yeah, and you know, it gives me goosebumps, Brady, hearing that and all the hard work that our implementations do, and building out these integrations and spending time with Jeff and team to let him know of any things that come up, any questions that we have, and Jeff's and team's willingness, you know, to work with us, right? Again, the customer experience is true to our heart. And, you know, Jeff, that brings me to you, and really what makes this such a strong technology partner in the Delmia Works ecosystem?
Yeah, I think we share a common approach, which is the customer first, right? In our industry, in our practice, that's what we practice. I can say the Canvas team does, as Brady just alluded, right? Changing things up, and Canvas gladly accepting those things. Same thing from our side. That customer first approach, being aligned there is huge to us, as well as our customers. I think we share integration, you know, similarities and approaches, right? It's been pretty fluid, pretty seamless in terms of how we go about the integration, the timeline, the expectations, who owns what, right? Really is key. And then a software just with experience within the manufacturing industry, right? We're a software that's you know, kind of a mid-tier manufacturing software that handles a variety of industries: automotive, food and beverage, medical, retail, packaging, right? So partnering with a software that shares you know, familiarity in those industries is huge, and we've seen that with the Canvas team.
Amazing, Jeff and Brady. You know, kudos to you guys. It's been such a journey. We've learned so much from the two of you today, and throughout implementation and our continued work with Delmia Works. Right, you don't find automation vendors having this much of an in with an ERP. So knowing that it's all in the best of our clients is really what chimes home for us. And that wraps up more or less our topics for today. And Himanshu, let's go ahead and skip our last poll for today and just dive right into our Q&A session here. I know we only have such a short time left. Maybe we'll pull it up. We'll be quick in it and just seeing, you know, learning a little bit more from our audience. What is their biggest barrier to scaling these finance operations and manufacturing today? Again, we'll be quick here. Make sure everything is wrapped up. It looks like a good percent are already coming in about scaling volume without adding more headcount, manual invoice and document processing. So I hope you guys had some really great takeaways from today's session. Again, huge thanks to Brady and Jeff for all the customer insights and the ERP insights, right? You don't get these perspectives often, and hearing some of the value that they brought today is truly, truly special, especially for myself. And with that said, we will come to our Q&A session for today. I do see some questions that have been asked in our chat here. And Brady, I think this one's a good one for you, because I know that you guys had considered a few things. And our first question in the chat here is, what should finance teams consider before adopting AI automation?
That's a really good question. It's a loaded question.
Yeah, true.
I think you should consider, one, what value would you gain by having more time available to do other things? Our accounting department in particular is kind of the powerhouse of the company from the standpoint of technology. We help all the other departments learn the ERP. We help our quality department with audits, compliance, you name it, maintenance department with everything. So we had a lot on our list as far as what we wanted to accomplish, and not a lot of time. And so, you know, by going with Canvas and freeing up that time, we derived a lot of value in being able to progress the company in other areas. You know, the other thing you want to look at is scalability. If the company plans to scale, or you foresee, you know, higher volume invoices or sales orders or whatever it may be, documents coming in, then it's obviously a lot better to implement a technology like Canvas than it is to add more employees. You know, from the finance perspective, when you look at benefits and you look at, you know, just liability of, you know, training employees, onboarding, and then hoping that they stay in today's work environment. If you can go with technology and it serves the purpose that you want it to serve, then I would recommend that's the way you go.
Yeah, great point there, Brady. Yeah, because, you know, we think about the cost that it takes to hire a new person, but it's the burden weight too of training that person and not knowing if tomorrow they're going to be with us or not. And so it's sharing that you know, unique value, business processes that, you know, for Sisler manufacturing may have, and ensuring that, you know, that is the defined workflow throughout our team. So really, really great. And, you know, Brady, just really quick, I'll come back to you on this one, because I find it very interesting. You know, we've been working with you on the vendor agent to get that implemented for your vendor onboarding, but there's also some other unique things you're doing in Canvas too, which I think we missed it a little bit earlier. Can you talk a little bit about the expense reports while we got just a few minutes left here?
Yeah, so one of the cool things about Canvas that I didn't see in any other product that we demoed is the ability to just use natural language to create a prompt that's going to affect how your extraction occurs. And so, you know, I've done a lot of messing around with that, and I was curious, you know, can we leverage this for more than just, you know, regular supplier vendor invoicing? So I started to look at that from credit card statements, and expense reports are both expense reimbursement reports. That is, those are time consuming for our accounting department to enter. And so I created a couple prompts. Took me, you know, all but 5-10 minutes to create the prompts, do some testing in the test environment, and was able to yield the result that I wanted. And now we've got a process where the expense reimbursement form is being extracted automatically, pushed into the system with supporting documents, receipts, what have you. Same thing with credit card statements. We're actually going to give the credit card holders the ability to go in there and type in a comment so that we know what that purchase is, because if you deal with credit card statements, you know that, you know, the best you can get from, you know, the actual statement is maybe the vendor. You don't really get a whole lot of information. And so leveraging Canvas in unique ways to save time in other places. So
Brady, you put it best, and what a way to put a bow on this thing. Jeff, Brady, can't appreciate you guys enough for joining today's session, being alongside me. Looking forward to our continued work efforts together, gentlemen. And for our audience, if you guys do have any questions, you like what you saw today, please feel free to reach out to myself or our VP of Business Development, Cody Erickson. Brady, Jeff, thank you, fellas. Looking forward to seeing you next time.
all right, thanks, Tanner.
Thanks, guys.